Hey everybody, I'm Natalie Bishop. I am Dean of the Library at Gardner-Webb, and with me is Sarah. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, I'm Sarah Bonner, and I'm the Director of Library Services at Chilwan University.
So, we all face different challenges demonstrating our library's value to our campus stakeholders. And part of the challenge in demonstrating that value comes with the challenges of issues that we all face with our budgets and with staffing. So, Sarah and I kind of think tanked together some easy to implement strategies that can help you communicate your library's value across the campus to different stakeholders. Um, we also just wanted to acknowledge we are all stretched thin. That is common, I think, to all higher ed libraries, even the larger ones, but particularly those of us at smaller institutions. And so, just a couple of key takeaways that we want you guys to kind of keep in mind. Identify who your biggest campus stakeholders are. We've identified four shared ones between our campuses. Um, Figure out what you can eliminate or where you can consolidate, whether that is services or resources or ways that you spend your budget. Lean into the library as a third place. Sarah's going to talk a lot more about that later, but keep it simple. And then finally, while we are presenting a lot of different things to choose from, neither Sarah or I are implementing all of these things at our campuses. This is a combination of what two different campuses are doing. So strategically choose what fits your library the best and ignore the rest. All right. So, the biggest stakeholder group that I work with most often is our senior administration. And figuring out how to communicate the library's value to this group is probably the most different than communicating the library's value to our other stakeholder groups at our campus. They don't care as much about the outreach initiatives that we're doing. They just want to know, are you doing them? So I tried to really think through what talks to or to administrators in a way that is effective, helps both me and them make decisions about the library, and then really pushes my proposals that I take to them forward so that we can then take action. And none of this is anything new to any of you, but administration likes budget, finance, and data-driven decisions. And so I really had to think through what are some strategic ways that I can collect and leverage my data so that I'm not spinning my wheels constantly tracking down data sources for my library to answer specific questions from administrators. So if my administrators are like, hey, what percentage of your budget did you spend on database subscriptions? Well, I calculate that every year as part of our internal annual report. And I don't have to go like, oh crap, I need to go through all the invoices and figure that calculation out. I can literally pull up a spreadsheet and I have that. Or if they're questioning a database or a license agreement, and they're like, hey, what is the cost per use for this resource? And how does it compare to the cost per use for the last 2 years? I've got all of that in a spreadsheet. I can pull that up within 10 minutes or less and provide them with an answer. And that keeps different initiatives that we're trying to push through the administrative channel from bogging down. Um, while initially it did take us some time to change our professional practice and, make sure that we were consistently updating our spreadsheets, making that part of our habit. now that we've been doing that for a couple of years, it's just sort of on autopilot. And we're kind of letting the data create itself because we're just entering it into the system that we've created. So whatever form, tool, tracker, spreadsheet, platform is your preference or the one that your campus uses, we're a Microsoft campus, leverage those tools, enter your, fixed data points like your invoices, that you get every year, enter those in there and then, that will just make it a little bit easier to communicate that to your administration. The other thing that I have found really helpful is incorporating AI into my communications with my administrators. I know that AI, even in the library world, can be a little bit of a contentious topic, but I decided to start using it just so I could understand, like, well, what are its capabilities and what are its limitations? Because I'm not really sure how I feel about it. And so, what I have started doing is if we are proposing to start a new service or we want to you ask for a part-time employee to have full-time status or we want to purchase a new database, I like to give my administrators a one pager that outlines what I'm trying to do, why I'm trying to do it, and then the data to back it up, like back up the need. And so using AI to like ugly write all the stuff that I would have put in like 3 pages worth of a Word document and say, all right, edit this into a one pager with small narrative points and bullet points underneath has been a game changer in terms of saving me time. It's still a document that I have to edit, but it saves me like hours worth of work where I would have spent, wordsmithing down into a one pager, and that has just been a great resource for me. Sarah, is there anything you want to add with in terms of how you collaborate with your admin?
Well, yeah, actually, I would like to kind of echo what you're saying about AI because I've also been doing the same thing you have, where I will just kind of write and get all my thoughts out, and then I'll put into AI and say, make this sound better. My target audience is administrator. My target audience is students. Please adjust the wording for my target audience. This is the mood I'm trying to convey, so please make sure it conveys that mood. And it's really good about doing that kind of stuff. As Natalie's saying, it's not perfect, and you still want to edit it after you've done that, but it really does do a lot in terms of helping you in the writing process. Um, so yeah, I do think that is definitely a good time saver if you're not already using it.
And Sarah, I'll hand off to you to talk about popular services in the third place.
Okay, well, as we were putting this presentation together and we were talking about popular services that build value, it came to me that basically what we're trying to do is build the library as a third place. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term third place. It's a sociological term that was invented in the late 80s, which basically means your home is your first place, your work is your second place, and places where community gathers is the third place. And as academic libraries, we seek to be the third place on our campuses with our different stakeholders. So some of the things that we thought that we could do that are low stakes is, collaboration. So with limited staffing, it helps if you can find other services that you can collaborate with things on campus to kind of combine your manpower and combine your resources to bring something that's really nice and get more people. Things that draw people into the library like coffee, game collections, reading collections, and technology is also big. With the 3D, we both have, our universities have 3D printers, and Gardner Webb has a podcasting studio. And then, of course, using the space by having a booking system, which, as Natalie pointed out earlier, helps with keeping track and that statistics to communicate with the administrators. So, as far as campus partners goes, Natalie mentioned earlier, there's really 4 stakeholders. And the first one we discussed was administration. And so the two that we're kind of discussing with our services are both faculty and students. And so, like, when I'm talking about campus partners, different faculty, different academic success things that are on campus, like student success, for instance, we actually have student success in our library, which I think is good because it drives up our gate count. And it brings people into the library for that, and then they stay and do other things and use our services. Partnering with first year programs. Recently, I did an escape room for all the CU 101, which is our first year program, for everyone, and everyone on campus has been talking about it. I was just walking around on campus recently, and one of the freshmen who did it said, "I loved your escape room. It was so much fun." And ever since I've done the escape rooms, I've just had freshmen stopping to talk to me. So they really liked it, and it really allowed me to form that connection with the freshmen. Would you like to say something, Natalie, about campus partnerships?
Yeah, we have started partnering with our student success. One of our librarians had come up with the idea to offer a pre-conference readiness workshop to support our students that were going to present at, like an honors conference or that kind of thing. And she was having a casual conversation with somebody in student success, and they were like, "Oh, we're planning the exact same kind of thing." And they both had a moment where it was like, we're both planning the same thing for the same group of students, and they decided to change their plan and collaborate together. And it ended up being such a fruitful partnership. They've done it twice now. And the thing that both of them had to say about it is, had they continued alone, um, they would have been responsible for the heavy lift of that programming, the marketing, getting the faculty and the students to come independently. But when they partnered together, they split those duties apart, and both of them were kind of like, like this one wasn't that bad in terms of pulling off an event, because our student success department is also short-staffed, just like we are. And so it was a really cool partnership to get to, see as a dean and then our VP of student success. And we were like, this is great. Let's do more. And so that has been a really rewarding partnership to have on our campus. We also have it on here, about making space available. Um, we have a lot of student clubs that are very active at Gardner Webb, and they're always looking for space to meet. And we just started telling students, well, you can book spaces in the library for your club to meet. And that's become pretty popular as well. And so we've got more students using the space, maybe not for research, but they're still using it to gather and, do campus related things, which is really nice. So, talking about inviting spaces, probably one of the most difficult things that we all face as librarians on small campuses, is not having enough money in our budget to buy the type of furniture that we would like to purchase to create those inviting spaces. And so, some of the things that Sarah and I talked through were, what are other things that we can do to make our spaces inviting? I mentioned just a few minutes ago, allowing students to book space for their meetings or their gatherings. But another thing that everybody loves is food and drinks. We have on Gardner Webb's campus wanted a coffee shop in our library for as long as I can remember. We have had several failed discussions with our food service provider to make that happen, and we still don't have one. I was talking with a colleague at Salem College, and she stole this idea from somebody else, but she was like, well, we just put a Keurig and some K-cups out there. And I was like, well, how did the students pay for the K-cups? And she was like, they don't, they're just out there. And I was like, well, how are you affording this in your budget? And she said, really, it hasn't had that big of an impact on the budget, but the students really love that it's there if they choose to take part in it. And so that's why I call it coffee that you can afford. Because we could not get a coffee shop, but we could get our administration behind a K cup and a Keurig, where we found that the K cup Keurig situation hit our budget the hardest was on providing paper products. So, like your paper mugs. And so we decided to do a bring your own mug Keurig system. It just so happens we had a sink available next to the Keurig machine, so that worked out really well. But we got a lot of students who were using it. They're bringing their own mugs, and we have made a few mugs that we cleaned out of our personal closets available just in case somebody didn't bring one. So that has worked out really well. And kind of like my colleague at Salem mentioned, the students just like knowing it's there if they need it. And so that's been a really nice and very low investment and low budget impact service that we could provide that really held a lot of value with our students.
So Chowan University has both a game collection and what we're calling a popular reading collection. So I'm going to talk about the game collection first. So with the game collection, how it got started is because we decided we wanted to do a community puzzle. And we asked people to donate puzzles, which we put one out on the table for people to do, to just for people to come up and solve and just spend a few minutes solving a puzzle, walk away, and then someone else would come up and work on it. And that went really well. I will say one thing about the community puzzle. As we were doing events and we needed the space, it was hard to move the puzzle. So I ended up buying a $10 puzzle mat that we could use to easily move the puzzle when we're doing events. But like I said, that worked really well. It's just kind of a nice way. It fits in with the whole mindfulness umbrella of different things that I've talking about, like how to be mindful, because it's something that you can do and be mindful. And after the puzzle took off, we then decided, well, let's do the same thing with games. We restrict our games to tabletop games only, not video games, because those are expensive. The technology changes quickly, but tabletop games, you buy it and the technology doesn't necessarily change as quickly as games, so you can get more value for that. And at first we, again, asked people to donate it, which is how we got the core collection. And this is something that's cataloged and can be checked out. But what I've discovered is, even though there are people that will check out games, most students like to come in and just have impromptu game nights in the library without us having to market them. They just come in, they'll pick up a game and they'll start playing. And again, no staff involved with us having to market or anything like that. And I find it's really popular. And even if they don't use it, like the coffee, it's kind of something that they just enjoy having in the building. So that is our game collection.
We found that a lot of our students tend to play the games more like from midterm to exams. Like that's really when we see our games start to circulate around the building the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they've had a chance to get to know each other, whereas at the beginning of the year they don't really know each other as well.
Yeah.
At least with freshmen. So that's it with games. Now with popular reading, we for a very long time had a standing order, and we still do have a standing order for the New York Times bestsellers, where we get the hardback. At this point, it's the top 5 for both fiction and nonfiction. And because we were getting so many fictions in, we have a separate fiction collection, which is rather robust. We also added, maybe 5 years ago, a graphic novel collection, which is up there with where the fiction is at the end. And both collections are really popular. And then there's a third one that I'm considering popular reading, which you guys might not think about because we're academic libraries and we serve adults, but young adult fiction or juvenile fiction. Because if you think about it, our students are, especially with the early freshmen, first year students, they're transitioning. They're in the tradition stage between childhood and adulthood. And so I kind of am taking the same approach that NC Live takes, where they're saying they're kind of the core of their collections for the last 2 years of high school and the first 2 years of college. I kind of take that same attitude when it comes to popular reading, that my target for collecting is the last 2 years of high school and the first couple of years of college, because that allows them to do that transition with the young adults to the adult books if they so choose. And to collect the young adult books, we use something called Junior Library Guild, which you can buy packages. In our case, we get high school packages, and there's like 12 or 14 books that they send you a year. And so you buy as many packages, those little packages, as you want, and you automatically get books throughout the year. So even at the end of the year, after you run out of budget and you don't have budget for new books, you're still getting new books in, because like I said, you buy the package at the beginning of the school year, and then it lasts an entire year. So it's kind of one of those things where you pay like X number of dollars up front, and then you get like 14 books spread out through the year. So it's a good way of getting new stuff in when you have no budget to be getting in with Junior Library Guild. And I will say
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I would say popular reading has made up approximately 30% of our entire circulation. Looking at the graphic novels, the fiction, and the junior, and the juvenile stuff, that's approximately 30% of our entire circulation.
We have a lot of movement with our popular reading collection. Our approach has some similarities and some differences with Sarah's approach at Chawan. To start with, we just pulled what we already had in our main collection and just changed its location to be a standalone collection within the building. And we did that over the course of a couple of summers. To continue to develop that collection, we have several librarians who are pretty big readers, and I would say that our reading tastes are more similar to our faculty and staff on campus, just because we are of a more similar age. But our student workers, we have some big readers within that group. And so, usually, a couple of times a year, we'll stick a paper down at the circulation desk and email all the student workers and say, hey, this week, if there's any books that you wish we had in popular reading and we don't, write them down. And then we'll encourage them to also get recommendations from their friend groups. So that way, we're hitting different pockets of students across campus. And they make some great recommendations that I might not would have picked myself, just because my popular reading tastes are a little bit different. And so, I'd say annually we might spend between $300 and $500 a year to add books to that collection, maybe less. But it's strategic ads, because they're requests from our students. So, kind of like Sarah, there's different price points you can choose to come in at, whether you use, the Junior Library Guild, or you're crowdsourcing it from your campus. But, that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what your budget looks like. So, as Sarah mentioned earlier, both of our campuses have 3D printers, and at Gardner Webb, we also have a podcasting studio. One of the things I've discovered through the process of, building the labs for both the 3D printer and the podcasting studio, is that really, with any budget, there are different price points that you can come in at, so that you can make having a 3D printing lab or a podcasting studio feasible for your campus. And plus, there are grant opportunities out there, or I believe Sarah worked with a donor to acquire their 3D printer. So, and that's a really great thing, especially about 3D printing. There are lower budget models, but then there's also like the Cadillac ones, which we don't have that. But it's nice that there are different price point entry points for both of these products. The one thing I'll say about both 3D printing and podcasting, there is a learning curve, both for your staff and for your campus. And I was really fortunate. I had one staff member who really got enthusiastic about 3D printing, and another one who got really enthusiastic about podcasting. And so, I was kind of I was just fortunate. I had two people say, "Hey, take the lead on these two things and run with it," and they have. But we've after having had both of these services for 3 or 4 years now, it's really taken off on our campus. We have a lot of faculty and students who are interested in podcasting, both academically and also just for fun. We've got a group of football players that they have been doing their own podcast for a couple of years now. One of them came up to me and asked if I would unlock the studio for him, and he was like, I don't know if you know what TikTok is, but we're about to go viral. And I was like, keep a straight face because I do know what TikTok and viral both are. So, but it was really fun to see their enthusiasm for just having that technology available to them. So that's been a lot of fun. We're still growing what we do with our 3D printers. We haven't totally figured the secret sauce out with that, but we have done a lot of partnerships with our College of Health Sciences to print anatomical models of like organs and how they fit together. Probably the coolest thing that we fabricated on our 3D printer. They run simulation labs to teach our nursing students how to insert like a port that somebody would have for chemotherapy, and they could only buy the little port thing in like a peach skin tone color. And they wanted to be able to offer different skin tone types. And so they picked out filament um, in other skin tones and asked if we could print out the little port holder in the other skin tone types. So that way, their nurses had a chance to experience putting in the chemo port with different types of skin tones. And so, like, that was a really cool thing that we were able to collaborate with them on.
And yeah, Chillon, like I said, also has a 3D printer. We do not have a podcasting studio. And like Natalie said, I find that people can be intimidated by the 3D printer because it's something they're not familiar with. And then you get the other end of the spectrum where they're very familiar with it, but they have their own 3D printer, so they're not exactly interested in the library's public 3D printer. But what I've been using our 3D printer for mostly is student engagement. And so like students love to watch our 3D printer. And it's kind of one of those things that if you're never running it, people won't know that it's there and enjoy it. But at the same time, you don't want to just run it because you're running it. So I do things like, for example, last year we did a focus on mindfulness week at the end in April, where we 3D printed a bunch of fidget cubes. Actually, here's one right here that we 3D printed. And then we gave them out to students, like getting close to exam time, so that they have a fidget cube to play with and help with mindfulness and focus. We also, not mentioned in this, but when we do crafting events in the library, and so we've 3D printed like little tokens, I guess, that could be used for braiding on a keychain and things like that. Just little craft things to help with the library, and it saves us money too. When I did the escape room I was talking about earlier for the freshman experience classes, we 3D printed Chowan branding approved keychains that were given to the winners of the escape room. Everyone got candy, but the winners got the special 3D printed keychain. So those are some ways that we use it with student engagement.
The last group that we wanted to touch on were donors, friends, and alums. So Gardner Webb is a campus where we have tried 4 different times since 2010 to start a Friends of the Library program. And for a wide variety of reasons, have not been able to get that off the ground. Chowan has a different type of Friends of the Library program that I'll let Sarah talk about.
Well, our friends group has been around since I believe it was 1994 is when it started. And, it's one of those things where I work very closely with development or advancement, I think they're called now, in terms of just like writing letters, soliciting donations, having friend events. Which when I do a friend event, I have to be careful that I'm not making the event cost more money than the friends raise in a year. So it's one of those things where I do like low stake events where I get the speaker to come in that I know would interest the donor group. But I find that it's really good. And even just helping donors and friends with reference support, I find that does a lot to build value in their minds to the library. So, for instance, one year I had someone who was a friend who had found a document and they wanted to try and figure out who the signatures on this document was. And I sat there and I researched for them and I was able to identify it for them. And they were so thrilled that I sat down, took the time to help them. And I think that just had a lot, the fact that they know they can come to us and we'll help them, just does a lot in terms of building the library that we like things we do every day as part of what we just libraries function that just means so much to people that we don't necessarily take time to stop and think about how stuff that we do every day, how much it means to that particular person that they're getting this kind of help and support.
And to kind of build on that, like I said, while we don't have a Friends of the Library group, and I don't think that's something that I'm going to pursue in the future, we do have a really strong relationship with our advancement and alumni teams, and that has been a really fruitful partnership for us. There have been times that advancement or alumni have gotten us connected with people that had Gardner Webb stuff that they wanted to donate back to our collection and things that we didn't have, like Letterman sweaters and, the unique kind of stuff that people like to trot out for your History Day. And so that's been really nice for collection building. Advancement connected us with another alumni that her hobby was collecting rare books. And she got to a point in her life where she said, I am ready to let my collection go to its next home. And because of the relationship that our advancement team helped the library build with her, she selected our archive as the home for her rare book collection. And it wasn't the kind of gift where you're like, oh, thank you for that stuff that we don't want. It was actually a collection that aligned really nicely with some of our teaching goals for the university archive and for our information literacy library instruction program. And so that collection has been used quite a bit by our students and our faculty in the classroom. So, while it was a really cool gift as a rare book collection on its own, it also has residual value currently and for years to come as a teaching tool with our students and our faculty. And so that has been really exciting. And then last but not least, Sarah and I wanted to end with when it all feels like a lot. Because sometimes I feel that way every day. I go in and think it all feels like a lot right now. And sometimes the thought of trying to implement something new or something different feels like trying to run a marathon up Mount Everest. So we wanted to end it and distill down with 4 things that we thought were kind of the easiest to implement when your budget is small and you have staffing constraints. And so My two big contributions to the list were if you can get your administration behind allowing you to make a Keurig and K-Cup coffee station available, that goes a long way in building value with your students. And then having that CPU or cost per use and database invoice tracking spreadsheet where you can quickly and readily answer questions for your administrators. For me has gone the farthest in demonstrating value to my administrative team.
Yes. And I would definitely echo with the coffee cup, because we've done something similar and students love that. I think I see a question that popped up on here. I think that one's for you, Natalie.
Oh, okay. Let's
Chat.
see. And then the last two things we'll just do really quick is just make your space available for other people to host their own events. And that's stuff that happens in your building that you didn't have to be a part of. And then create new things with what you've already got. So, and then Devin, do we want to pass it over to you for Q&A?
Yeah, I'll start off with this question from Susan. Can you talk a little more about how you change your data collection processes to have that data readily available and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we participate in the ACRL reports each year, and I know it's kind of mixed across the state libraries that do and do not participate, but we looked at what data does ACRL ask us to collect. Then we made a list of what data we wanted to collect that help us make our own decisions, and we put that together in a spreadsheet. And during the summer, after the fiscal year ends, so like June 30th, we send that spreadsheet out to different staff members who are responsible for those different areas of data, and then ask them to complete that. So that way, not one person is stuck collecting all the data for the library, but it's kind of a shared experience. And usually we have all of the data collected by like the first week of September, somewhere in there. And I've just got it ready to pull up and read from. Plus, I have our back spreadsheet. So if I need to go further back than 1 or 2 years, I can look up the older spreadsheets. For our databases, even though we call it the database spreadsheet, it's really anything that we subscribe to annually. So I have the name of the subscription, so like Academic Search Complete, then the vendor, EBSCO. I have what year we started the subscription, last year's invoice, this year's invoice. And then we have the usage statistics for the year, calculated cost per use, and we have a formula set up in the spreadsheet. So I'm not doing math because you don't want me to do your math. And then I have a section for notes. So if we change something about a subscription or cancel a subscription, I put in like a brief one-liner why we made that change. And then that way I've always got that data there to answer those questions quickly. I hope that helps.
Sorry, muted myself. Ashley also added in how frequently do folks update the spreadsheets at this point?
We used to update the spreadsheet throughout the year. Now we do the spreadsheet one time. So if I get asked a question pertaining to that data and it's January, then I pull up the fiscal year 24-25 spreadsheet. I tell whoever I'm providing the information to, this is from the 24-25 fiscal year or academic year. Here's your information. We stopped collecting data as it was being requested because it was taking up so much staff time. So we just let whoever's asked it know, this is from this data collection point. We're collecting it one time, reporting it in the spreadsheet one time, And that's the data you have to work with for the whole upcoming year.
Any other questions, folks? Feel free to drop them in the chat. We did have some questions come in via registration that I want to share. We do so many different things, but only have limited opportunities or time to demonstrate that to leadership. How do I identify what they consider to be valuable or impactful so that I can focus on those things?
That's a good question, because as far as leadership concerned, I think a lot of it else depends on your campus culture. Like in our campus culture, I know what is important to leadership is making the students happy. But again, it might be different at another campus culture. It's just kind of getting a feel for your campus culture and what's being prioritized by your administration, and just kind of talking to different people, like, what do you find the most valuable? Would you have something you'd like to add to that, Natalie?
I would agree with that. We recently brought in a new associate provost and provost. And so when I met with both of them, I was like, here's a one pager of the library's top priorities, like what we interpret as the top priorities for the library on our campus. And then I asked them what was their vision for the library's top priorities on our campus. And, I found that there was a lot of similarity between what we felt like our role was and what they felt like our role was, with just a couple of changes, but it was a good starting point for that an open conversation between us and administration. I used ChatGPT to help me write that.
We have a question. What visuals are best for communicating with administrators?
What do you feel like works best on your campus, Sarah?
Since our administrators are just super busy, something that they can look at quickly without having to do a lot of reading. So graphs probably would be the best, just something that they can look at quickly. And I think that's the challenge of the librarian, is figuring out the fastest way to get your point across without just to save the time of the administrator.
The one pagers have worked good for us, but I'd say, yeah, pretty similar.
I think, and this comes from a web design background that I have, a lot of people scan and they don't read. So anything that you can format in a way that they can just quickly scan through and see your bullet points, whether it be like a graph or just bullet points with the statistics that you think are the most important that they want to hear, are good for the administrators, because if they can just quickly scan through it, get the information they need and get out, that's what they want.
We have Diane asking in the chat, are photos that convey your message helpful?
I found, so our library inside does not photograph well. And so I found that in our case, it hasn't really helped very much at all. But if your library does photograph well inside, ours is mostly due to lighting, and how a space translates in an image. But if your library does photograph well, that might be a really good strategy to use.
And even if your library doesn't photograph really well and you're trying to convince administrators to help you get better lighting, that might be a good strategy to use too. I think it also depends on who your target audience is. I think photos are just like words. You got to figure out who your target audience is and what you're trying to convey, and making sure that it hits that point. I mean, graphics, because people are automatically drawn to graphics, but if it's not conveying the point you need.
I would say, Sarah, yeah, to that point, there's times that we walk around the building and, you'll see a game set up, or some student group has filled up all the whiteboards with stuff, and we might take a picture of it and text it within our library employee group. And so that means a lot to us. Like, oh, like they're using whatever. But I have found, at least in our case, those same images did not translate well to administrators.
Mhm.
So, Sarah's point of who is your audience, even for a photo, is really important.
Yeah, like photos are really good for social media. So if your audience is students, like, hey, look at what your fellow students are doing in the library, you can do this too. That might be successful, but not so much with administrators who care about numbers and budgets.
Right. Like a photo of student work might be good in social media or like a program or something. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, figuring out what makes sense for the audience is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's actually in our student success course that we provide on the NC Live website. The last module in the course covers creating one-pagers for different departments and campus partners. Um, but yeah, knowing the right elements to include in that is key. Um, One question that came up is how do we engage faculty, especially when it comes to library instruction, resources, and OER?
Oh, goodness. Well,
Big question.
that is, I mentioned to Sarah earlier while we were planning this that I find the faculty group the most challenging group to demonstrate our value to. And that's not a slam on our faculty at all. Our faculty is great, and we have a lot of really strong faculty partners at Gardner Webb. But broadly, demonstrating the library's value to faculty, um, I think has gotten harder because just like we're stretched thin with being understaffed in our library departments, I think our faculty colleagues are, in a lot of cases, stretched thin in their academic departments. And I think it's hard for them to make room to hear about what we have to say, not necessarily because they don't value what we do or what we offer, but it's one more thing that they have to think about. And so I just find them a harder group to reach and demonstrate our value with. What I have done is, and also not just me, but the other librarians at my campus, we know we can kind of tell who is primed or receptive to be like, hey, do you want to try something new? And, we kind of snatch those people up and try some new things, whether it's with library instruction or OERs or resources, or like, don't you want to 3D print something with your class? And but that's how the podcasting studio took off. And then that faculty member was telling another one of their colleagues, like, hey, I did a podcasting assignment with my students, and they were like, I could never do that. And they were like, yeah, you can just book a podcasting session with the library. And they're like, what? And so maybe the best way is, find those handful of faculty that have the mental space at the moment to try something a little different, and then let them be the ambassador to demonstrate the value to their colleagues.
And I'd kind of like to also echo what Natalie's saying. I think faculty are definitely the hardest group to connect with. Just because of, like she said earlier, they're busy, we're busy, and when you only have a limited amount of time, it's hard to make that connection. What I do though is I get outside the library and I go to where the faculty are, and I go to different like presentations that are done on campus. At lunchtime in the school cafeteria, a lot of the faculty like to gather there, so I make sure I go and eat lunch with them and just establish those friendships that are, the professional work friendships by going outside the library and just doing the hard work, because I know that once they have a question, people are more likely to go to people they consider friends than people that are strangers. And I know that's a lot easier said than done on our campus because we don't have a lot of adjuncts. And so when people aren't on campus, that's a lot harder to make that connection. Like with like adjuncts, for example, who might be only online and the only way you can talk to them is through emails and things like that. So I know that's a lot easier said than done. So my suggestion is try and focus on people you know you can make connections with and not worry so much about the people you can't make connections with. Because once you make connections with people you know you can, it'll spread. Like going back to the podcasting example that Natalie just said, she made a connection with one person who then told someone else. And so that's my advice.
There's that peer influence with faculty that seems to work.
Yes.
One of the things that we started doing too, the librarians at our campus attend and participate in our monthly faculty meetings, and we're also in faculty committees. But I try to several times throughout the academic year, there's a portion of our faculty meeting where different stakeholders can stand up and give announcements. And sometimes I'm like, hey, guess what? We have this citation style manual as an ebook now. If you have questions, email one of the librarians, will help. And so even though that feels really uncomfortable and awkward, I think that that has been helpful too, because we will get some follow-up emails from folks in different discipline areas.
Yeah, that's such a good way to meet them where they are and just kind of give those reminders. Folks, we have a couple more minutes left for questions. If there are any, please feel free to send them in the chat or unmute yourself if you'd like. We have one more question that came up in registration. Asking, how does a library use this impactful data to show needs with ever-growing budget cuts? For example, your library might be short-staffed, causing the discussion to cut back operating hours. The data shows this need and that more students are coming to the library, but administration says it's not in the current budget.
We've been in a similar situation where we had to cut hours because we had cuts in staffing. And while I can only provide like the historical data of what happened during those hours up to the point that they were cut, I'll just periodically revisit that with administration and say, hey, just a reminder, there was a need. We cut these positions. We can no longer maintain these hours. But as we're, going through the new budget cycle, I'm putting in a request that this be added back into the budget. Thus far, I've done that twice. It has not been successful, but at least I'm still putting it out there. I think probably two of the hardest things I have dealt with as a library administrator has been increasing the operating budget for the library, and which I was able to get a little bump, but that was extremely difficult. And then getting back positions, and I have not been successful in getting my positions back.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely very difficult to do, and I've not been successful in that either.
All right. Any final questions as we wrap this hour up? Natalie and Sarah, is it okay if we include your contact info in the follow-up email so that folks can reach out with any questions?
Yep.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for leading this webinar. Sarah, thank you for jumping in and taking that second spot and sharing your expertise. This was awesome and full of practical advice. Folks sharing thank you in the chat, and this was so helpful. Yeah, I really appreciate you all sharing your wisdom with our membership. Folks, keep an eye out for that email from me tomorrow. I'll link to the series webpage. I encourage folks to sign up for other webinars happening this month, and we will have more on demonstrating your library's value in the coming months as well. But I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Yeah.